we will be discussing on defiance, which I think in my little introduction I wasn't so clear probably, but you really synthesize, I see, all the themes and the problems that were created in the previous novels, and now you really did a work of art.
Thank you so much.
Because everything is so synthetic and everything intertwined that I believe you have reached the mixture of the form and the content in an expanded way.
Thank you very much.
Could you probably tell us what is the plot briefly?
A woman, Bernadette O'Brien, is the burning and dying star at the heart of the novel. She is in prison waiting to be executed on death row in Georgia for the murder of 2 of her students at Harvard University. She herself is a genius, was a child prodigy, and product of a working class Irish Catholic family, and went through Harvard herself at a very young age, and finds herself in this awful predicament now, waiting to be killed herself.
Even in this novel, you are still looking for new ways of expressing or new ways of building up this novel. But yet it still keeps down with the journal, for example, the format of a journal.
Yes.
But it tells two types of story. One is the waiting for her death, and the other one remembering her past, right?
Exactly.
Did it work? I mean, obviously you did a beautiful job of this, but was it in memoir type of thing? Did you have still to use the memory and...
Yeah, well, I think there are 2 tensions, you know, the narrative driving forward toward her death, and the lyric, softer edges of memory entering that. And so there's a coming up close of those 2 impulses, which I think give you more friction and more of a feeling of being unsettled and disturbed.
At the very beginning of the novel, you say, or the novel says, that memory is something that can be expanded or shortened. Do you see memory as a sort of fiction? Is there any difference? Obviously there is, but I think, how do you see it? Because
sure I do.
By playing with words like that, say memory can be expanded, I imagine that becomes fiction.
Right, sure. I mean, I do think that one uses memory for what one needs, you know, and so to be able to, if at all possible, change, reinvent,
But you don't mean really inventing a memory of the past, or rather expanding or going deep into the memory. I see a difference between memory and fiction.
Yeah, I mean, there is a difference.
Memory of something existed.
Exactly, but how it existed and how it happened and what is remembered and how selectively it's remembered is an interesting question. You know, what is remembered, what really happened.
So it is there for the author to choose or reject.
Exactly, just like fiction itself, really, you know.
Even though there is a difference between those two. Yes,
absolutely.
This, usually you had chapters, or you had, I think, some kind of separation between the one chapter and another. This one you divided very clearly as Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Is this a play?
In a way it is. I mean, in a way it is a passion play. In a way it is a predetermined set of acts. You know, it's got 4 acts, which is an odd number of acts, you know, when you think of 3 or 5. But something is awry here.
4 is human perfection.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk about numerology. You are an expert in that. Some of the times I get lost, I have to say.
Exactly. Well, yes, Bernadette, I forgot to mention, is a mathematician. That is her genius.
Genius.
Yeah.
And all that writing and numbers. Obviously, there's a psychological probably background to it, or meaning to it. But at this point, I would like to say, you just mentioned the word passion play. Obviously, the passion play reminds me of in the past. Maybe you could explain what you mean by a passion play? It's not a love play. It's
no, I think that we're going through, in a way, the stations of Bernadette's final days, and in that way, as in Christ's Passion. You know, it's a very religious book, I think, and the silent God is the God that Bernadette keeps raging against. You know, she's utterly isolated, and for me, the isolation is the most touching and difficult part of the book. Everything has forsaken her, and so in that way, I see it as the passion of Bernadette O'Brien, really.
Here she is a sinner. She has killed, obviously, two boys. And yet, the passion play, to me, implies that she, in addition to being a sinner, she is also a saint, a martyr. Doesn't it become that? I thought, because you do mention the word passion play towards the end of the book.
Right, right. Well, I do think, and
I imagine you had that in mind.
Absolutely. You know, I really sort of tried to mine Irish culture a little bit in this book because it's so rich and it's so beautiful and it's so filled with myth and legend. And she is a bit based on Saint Bridget, who was also called Saint Bride, who was also associated with fire and with a ring that returns and returns. And so these things have been built into her particular sainthood, you know, here.
Yeah, because also, even though, again, she was the sinner and found guilty of murder, feminism movement or females or feminists do praise her and do find they want to save her. So she is seen as a heroine for some people and a criminal from others. So she does become some kind of martyr that dies for a cause, really. Even though she doesn't recognize that.
And refuses it. Yes,
right.
She refuses it.
Yeah. As we said before, the previous segment, the women, the heroine in the first novels, sort of fight, but they accept their destiny. They say, "Why you've forsaken me, God?" But they accept it. But Bernadette here instead is a person who takes the world in a way in its own hands. She refuses to be saved.
Right, and she refuses to feel sorry for herself, and she refuses all in her final, you know, which is, I think there is a kind of exuberance and freedom finally to Bernadette. People aren't sure why they like her. She's done heinous things and committed terrible crimes and is a very frightening figure, I find. And yet there's something there that's very admirable as well.
Yeah.
Which is the predicament, you know.
In addition from being an Irish girl and Irish American, and also having killed two people and being a genius, she has basically suffered some very serious abuses herself as a child. She began a life of abuses, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that is probably what creates her as a character and as a person.
Yeah.
I think Bernadette will become a character that is not going to be easily forgotten.
Oh, good. That's
I foresee.
Yeah.
It won't be easy to be forgotten.
She interests me a great deal because of that, because of her humanity, and also because hopefully you've stayed the whole book in her mind. You go nowhere else but the claustrophobia and the prison of her own mind. And I hope, I've never written a sort of social document or a political document, but I hope by the end of the book you think, you know, we're executing this woman, and, you know, what should she have died?
She comes through as a young girl as a prostitute. She's a genius, 12 years old, she's in Harvard, right? Harvard student. But yet she's gone a very dark moments in her life.
Absolutely.